focused on was implementing AI into their computers, phones, everything.
All right, guys. So, who's this a picture of?
Benjamin.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin. So, just because I've been doing a little bit, watching some historical stuff and I'm reading some historical, he's just one of my guys right now. I'm loving listening to. But do you guys realize that you could argue that he is the reason why America is America? Like, he's the single reason. Obviously, there's lots of people. Any ideas why I would say that? Why Benjamin Franklin is the reason why we actually made it as a country? Any guesses? I'll give you a clue. It has to do with military. Not enough of a clue?
Not on the web.
So he was a diplomat, obviously, and represented a lot of interest of America, and he became kind of a movie star, not really, but he became super popular in France. And so we had all of this huge respect. And so when we began when the revolution started, guess what we needed? We needed some military might in order to be able to fight Brits. Well, Benjamin Franklin, because of his respect that he had with France, because of he was a genius and he was an inventor, and they thought he was like, the coolest thing ever. He is single-handedly you can attribute single-handedly to him, even though John Adams was over there, they didn't like John Adams, to France saying, yes, we will fight with you, America, against Britain. And if we wouldn't have had that, we wouldn't have been surviving that. So, and if you know much about Ben Franklin, he invented so many things. He obviously was critical in the Declaration of Independence. He was critical in just the foundation in forming documents of the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He was he just did so many things. But one of the things that I love about him is his intentionality. So this is just a couple quick excerpts. So he had 13 virtues. He came up with these 13 virtues that to him were the most important virtues to have, which was temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. And every day he would rate himself on those 13. And every week he would focus on one in particular. So he would say, this week is about tranquility. This week is about resolution. And he would make that week, his focus would be, I'm going to seek to grow in my resoluteness or my frugality or my industry. And he did that for almost his entire life. He did this started this when he was super young and did it his almost entire life. And so to me, he's just a great example of living an intentional, deliberate life where you're not just going with the flow, but you're really saying, what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of person do I want to be? And how am I going to be that? So that's the example that I use. But before talking any more about intentionality, I want to talk to you about the power of passivity. So being passive is not a neutral power. It is something that is inherent within us. I believe it's actually in the way we're made, but it's not a good part of how we're made. So these are a couple quick just stats that are pretty wild. So, and it's all over the place. I mean, meaning the range is all over the place. But this is the one that I trusted the most, which is just it's market data. So it's how they rate different markets. And what they're saying is the average American spends 4.9 hours, not on media, not on digital, on television. Television, which is hard for me to even wrap my head around. But so on average, 4.9. The average household spends 25 hours a day on digital media. So if you take all, average households, 2 adults with 1.9 kids, I mean, it's just absolutely astounding. This is just an example. There's a without giving any details of. There's a dad that I know and a daughter that I know, and she had gotten suspended, and it was like 3 days later, and the dad, who's at home, it's not like he's traveling, had still not talked to his daughter about the suspension. Not because he doesn't love her, not because he's angry with her, but just to exactly know what to do or how to do it, and so just avoided it and let Mama take care of it, right? And I'm telling you, that's way more typical than not. 80,000 amputations a year in this country from diabetes. So diabetics, if they don't abide by their dietary restrictions, will end up getting neuropathy. I think it's the right way to say it, neuropathy. In their extremities, usually their feet. And there are so many people who are unwilling to abide, even at a moderate rate with their diabetic restrictions, that they have to get their legs cut off at the ankle or the knee. 80,000 year after year after year. And my point that I'm trying to make is passivity is in us so deeply. We have such a tendency to be passive, even in the most extreme situations. You guys know much about getting an organ transplant, how intense and difficult it is to get an organ transplant? Did it do something?
No.
Okay. Does anybody know the process? I mean, it is like, you can't just think, oh, I want an organ transplant, my liver's shutting down, let me sign up for an organ transplant. It doesn't work that way. I mean, technically, yeah, you sign up, but you're on a waiting list. You have to go through a whole process. I mean, it is, and usually is it weeks? Do you think it's weeks?
Years.
And you're on your deathbed before.
That's right.
I have a friend that just got a kidney transplant.
Okay. And they were probably on the list for a long time, right? So it is intense. The screening
It
process.
was so bad that he had to go on dialysis during the process of waiting.
Yeah.
His brother was cleared to be a
Okay. So think about the process to get to the point where you're actually going to get an organ, right? Well, there's a thing called transplant medications, which keeps your body from rejecting the organ that is not part of its own system, right? So the medicine is really terrible in a lot of ways and really wonderful. This is an area where it's really amazing. So you have to take these medications that keep you from rejecting the very organ that was just inserted into your body. Depending on the statistics, upwards of 60% of those people will not take their medication. Well, it's because it's like 5 to 15 pills, and it's 3 times a day, and it's just hard. I was like, are you serious? Passivity, right? Passive. We are 10 hour, not just for the amputees, and not just for all of us. If we don't recognize our tendencies towards passivity, like, we'll just let it kind of go, we're deceiving ourselves. And then the classic and the most maybe famous example of passivity is Adam and Eve, right? So Eve eats of the fruit, Adam takes it from her, and what is his response to God when God says, hey, what happened? Why did you do that? And what does he say?
That woman.
Yeah, right? So total passive, like, hey, I was just chilling. And she was like, offering me an apple. And I said, sure, I'll tell you that. You know, it's total passivity. And I think, and I want to highlight it just because it's so deeply ingrained in us, and it's so detrimental. It's detrimental to our physical health. It's detrimental to our emotional well-being, our spiritual lives. You know, how many times do we just like, I just don't feel like whatever praying, or there's so many things that we're passive about because I just don't feel like it. It's detrimental to our marriages. It's detrimental to our parenting. It's detrimental to our jobs, right? Just passive. We could do this, an experiment. Just have you name somebody, and if you knew a little bit about their history, your story about that person that you respect and think, man, that person's amazing, you're going to find out that they were incredibly intentional. Whether it's a sports person, an actor, a musician, a politician, or whatever it is, businessman, you're not going to just find someone that, well, they just kind of arrived. I mean, just like they were magic. It was just, they were just so smart. Like even Einstein, well, he was brilliant, but it took him 10 years to discover the law of relativity, right? It didn't just happen. He had to focus and be intentional and lean in, you know? Every single person that you look up to, The reason you look up to them is for lots of reasons, but underneath all those reasons is they lived an intentional life. They were intentional with how they spent their time. They were intentional with what they did with their kind of time and, well, you know what? This isn't giving me the kind of return on investment that I want, so I'm going to adjust this, right? Everyone you respect is intentional. This is just a quick kind of, what does it mean to be intentional? First of all, think. Like think. Just, it's so easy not to think. Think. About whatever it is in your life that you need to think about. And then plan around, so I'll give you an example. So you're thinking about the way, I should have come up with an example beforehand. You don't like the way you feel. You're feeling a little sluggish, right? So you think about it. You think, I don't like the way I feel. Well, you begin to come up with a little bit of a plan. Hey, I've been hearing about eating whatever, a lot of, vegetables and high fat, quality fat's really good. Huh. And then you do it, and then you repeat, meaning, well, actually these kind of vegetables don't work for me. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna try these. It's think, plan, do on repeat until you find something that works in those different areas, in your marriage, with your children, with your body, with your spiritual life. And part of that think, plan, repeat process is failing. Like, do something. That's my point here. Just do something. Like, so often we're like, well, but what if, I hear this so often, it's so funny, because really it's a passive statement, and we've all said it probably, but it's like, well, it just depends on who you listen to. I mean, this guy says eat vegetables, this guy says eat only meat, this guy says, you can't win. Total passive. That's a passive response that really is an excuse, right? It's a way of saying, well, you just don't know. I mean, all the experts disagree with each other. Yeah, so experiment. Try what this expert says and see how it works, right? Like, if it doesn't work, at least you're leaning in. You're being intentional with, well, there's different, all this advice about how to parent. Some people say you need to do this. Try one. You're better to do something than just, dude, chill. Like, do something. Be intentional with your energy, your time, your heart. Like, intentionality is so powerful. And then the last part is rejecting your natural state. Now, you can, I believe, train yourself according to brain science and the way we're made. You can actually retrain your brain. Right? This is a beautiful thing. They used to think your brain was unchangeable. Now it's neuroplasticity, meaning it's like you can actually change your brain. So you can change, like the classic dudes, like, just the way I am. I've just been that way. No, it's just the way you're choosing to be. But you can actually change. You can change the way you think. You can change your emotions. You can change your basic makeup. So I was talking to someone this week, and they said, I was challenging him. I was saying, hey man, you react in a way that makes you look kind of foolish in group settings. And you would gain a lot more respect if you.
This was private between you.
I'm saying I wasn't saying your names. I just figured people would know.
Well, he had that conversation with you.
But I was just, he was very open. He's like, do you understand? I don't even know that what I'm doing until I'm doing it. So he goes from this to this, and he's like, I don't even know. And it was like, whoa, which is true. So the amygdala response, and this, I get all my science upside down sometimes here, but basically your amygdala, your brain, the reaction time between a thought, an emotion, and an action is like nanoseconds, right? It's so fast. But if you know, and if you've ever heard someone who's begun to change a radical behavior, it's just knowing you actually can shift. Maybe not well in the beginning. You're going to fail a lot, but you're not stuck. So if you do happen to react, and you just get angry, a key piece is acknowledging it. Here's just one little key, little helpful. Acknowledge it. Well, it doesn't say right here. I get triggered and I go off. Guess what I need to do? Expose it right here and apologize. Because what that does is it actually acknowledges, and there's a powerful thing that gets set up where I'm acknowledging A, that what I did was wrong, and I'm sorry that I did it. And then slowly, over time, as you continue to be humble and own it, when you went off on whoever and you went off on whoever, you own it, then what ends up happening is you begin to create a little bit of separation between what felt like you had no choice, to all of a sudden you have that split second, like, I want to just freaking blow up right now. But and then you still blow up, but at least you had a moment to think, and then there's a little more of a gap, and then all of a sudden you're not the guy that blows up anymore. Does that make sense? So all of this is just to say we need to know our tendency is to be passive in pretty much every area of life. Caleb and I were just talking. We were out just eating, talking about this is a critique on the church. This is my last point, and then I'll show you one more slide. It was a critique on the Christian church. And his point, which I love, he was 18, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and just out there with his thoughts. And he said, Dad, I look at the church, and I feel like so often the church is like in worse shape than just the world. Like emotionally, physically, I mean spiritually, maybe they have a leg up on the rest of the world,